discuss about the measures of dispersion today. Measures of dispersion means introduction. Dispersion refers to the variations of the items among themselves, around and averages. Dispersion refers to the variations of the items among themselves, around and average. Greater the variation amongst different items of a series, the more will be the dispersion. According to Bowley, dispersion is a measure of the variation of the items, according to Bowley. And according to Spiegel, the degree to which numerical data tend to speed about an average value is called the variation or dispersion of the data. Thus, the measures of dispersion describe the extent by which observations vary or scatter from a central value, and it measured as an average of the deviations of the observations from the central value. Measures of dispersion show the average of the difference of various items from an average. For these reasons, they are also called averages of the second order. This is the introduction about the measures of dispersion. Next, objectives of dispersion. So many objectives of dispersion: to determine the reliability of an average, to compare the variability of two or more series, for facilitating the use of other statistical measures, and basis of statistical quality control, and a practical application of the measures of dispersion is to measure and control undesirable variability. This is particularly true with respect to quality control, wherein variation in excess of desired levels lead to rejection of the production or unit. And to enable comparison of the different data series, compare the disparity between them and estimate the degree of variation. To understand the range of values that the given data series can take, to establish whether a measure of central tendency of a data series is truly representative of the series. Small measures of dispersion imply true representation, while high measures of dispersion indicate that the central tendency measures may not be representative of the data series. These are the main objectives of the measures of dispersion. And properties of a good measure of dispersion. So many properties of the good measure of dispersion. It must be easy to understand. Easy to calculate, simple to calculate, uniquely defined, and based on all observations, not affected by extreme values. Next, capable of further algebraic treatment. It should not be significantly impacted by size or composition of the sample, and it should be amenable to further algebraic or statistical treatment, and it must be rigidly defined, while every value in the series might have an impact on the measure. It must not be capable of the completely changing the measure such that the conclusion are totally different. In other words, it should be based on all values, based on all observations, all values in a given series. But it must not be unduly affected by extreme values. These are the main properties of the a good measure of dispersion. Easy to understand, simple calculated, easy calculated, uniquely defined, based on all observations, all values, not affected by extreme values, extreme observations, and capable of further algebraic treatment. These are the properties of the measures of dispersion. And next, measures of dispersion. There are different measures of dispersion. These measures can be classified into absolute measures and relative measures. Absolute measures and relative measures. An absolute measures is one that is expressed in terms of the same unit in which the expressed as a pure number without any units, which enable comparison of the levels of dispersion from a central tendency across different series stated in different units. These measures are also called as coefficients or dispersion. The important methods of studying various are listed: absolute and relative. Absolute and the expressed in the same units in such data is expressed, for example, rupees, kgs, liters, kilometers, etc. And relative in the form of where ratio or percentage, so is independent of units. It is also called coefficient of dispersion. Absolute methods of measuring dispersion. First of all, absolute measures of absolute. Measures of substitutive, the range and interquartile range or quartile deviation, and mean deviation and average deviation, and standard deviation and variance, and Lorentz curve. These are the measures, absolute measures. And next, relative measures, coefficient of range, coefficient of quartile deviation, coefficient of mean deviation, coefficient of variations. Coefficient of dispersion. Relative measures means coefficient of coefficients or dispersions. These are the classified measures, can be classified into absolute and relative measures. Mainly two types: absolute measures, range and interquartile range and quartile deviation, and next the mean deviation or average deviation, and next the standard deviation and variance, and Lorentz curve. Relative measures are coefficient of range, coefficient of quartile deviation, coefficient of mean deviation, and coefficient of variation. These are the methods of or classification of measures of dispersion. First of all, range. Range denoted symbol of R. It is the simplest measures of dispersion. It is defined as the difference between the largest value and smallest value in the series. Range is the difference between the values of extreme items of a series It is the difference between the values of the largest item and the smallest item value in the distribution. రేంజ్ అనేది మనకి ఇచ్చిన డాటాలో లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూకు స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూకు డిఫరెన్స్ రేంజ్. Symbolically, R is equal to, R means range is equal to L minus S, where R is equal to range, L is equal to largest value. మనకి ఇచ్చిన డాటాలో లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ, S is equal smallest value, smallest item value. Next, coefficient of range is equal L minus S by L plus S. L means largest value, S means smallest values. Largest value ki smallest value ki difference by largest value plus smallest అని addition చేస్తే coefficient of range value వస్తుంది. Range is equal to L minus S formula. L is equal to largest value, S is equal to smallest value, and R is equal to range. Next, coefficient of range is equal to L minus S by L plus S. It's simple understand, simplest to calculate, easy to understand range. It is the simplest measures of dispersion. It is defined as the difference between the largest and smallest values in the dispersion or series. Merits of the range. Main merits of the range, it is simplest to calculate to all measures, simple to understand, easy to calculate. It is very easy to understand, it is very easy to calculate, and it gives a highly level or brand picture of the data at 1 gallons, widely used in statistical quality control, and range is used for a variety of applications. Range is used to study variations in prices of stocks, commodities, gold, etc. Meteorological department uses these measures to forecast the temperature and other weather details. It is also extensively used for quality control purpose. Simple to understand, easy to calculate, widely used in statistical quality control. It is used for a variety of applications. So many applications. Merits of the range and demerits of the range. Demerits. It cannot be calculated in open-end classes, open-end distribution. It cannot be calculated in open-end distribution. And next, not based on all observation. And affected by sampling fluctuations, affected by extreme values. These are the demerits of the range. And for example, find out range and coefficient of range for the following data. Individual series చూడగానే మనకు తెలుస్తుంది. Individual series 20, 35, 25, 30, 50 మనకి ఇచ్చిన డేటా చూడగానే అది ఇండివిజువల్ సిరీస్ అని ఆటోమేటిక్గా మనకు అర్థమవుతుంది. సొల్యూషన్, మనకి ఇచ్చిన సిరీస్ ఆర్డర్లో రాయడం అలాంటి ఏమి ఉండవు. లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ ఐడెంటిఫై చేసి సరిపోతుంది. రేంజ్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ ఫార్ములా ఏంటి? ఎల్ మైనస్ ఎస్. ఎల్ మీన్స్ లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ, ఎస్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ. మనకి ఇచ్చిన డేటాలో లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ ఎంత ఉంది? 35 అండ్ స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 15. Range is equal to L minus S. 35 minus 15, that is equal to 20. Thus range is equal to 20. Simple, easy to understand, simple calculate, easy to calculate. ఇది ఇండివిజువల్ సిరీస్లో మనకిచ్చిన డేటాలో, మనకిచ్చిన ఐటెంలో, మనకిచ్చిన డిస్ట్రిబ్యూషన్లో లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూని ఐడెంటిఫై చేసి స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూని ఐడెంటిఫై చేసి డిఫరెన్స్ వాటి రేంజ్ ఆర్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ ఎల్ మైనస్ ఎస్ L is equal largest value, S is equal smallest value. Next, coefficient of range. Coefficient of range is equal formula L minus S by L plus S. L is equal 35, largest value, smallest value 15. 35 minus 15 by L plus S, 35 plus 15. That is equal 20 by 50. That is equal 0.4. Coefficient of range is equal 0.4 or 2 by 5. 0.4 or 2 by 5. Simple coefficient of range. This is the individual observations, individual series. Next, discrete series lo ela chestar. Find the range and coefficient of range. చూడగానే మనకు డాటాను చూడగానే డిస్క్రీట్ సిరీస్ అని అర్థమైపోతుంది. XF, X 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీ 15, 18, 25, 30, 16, 10, 9. మనకు ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీతో పని లేదు, అది రిపీట్ అయిన వాల్యూ, ఓన్లీ వాల్యూ, లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ అంటే మనకి ఇచ్చిన ఐటమ్స్ మాత్రమే తీసుకోవాలి. వేరియబుల్స్ ఎక్స్. ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీతో ఇక్కడ మనకు సంబంధం లేదు రేంజ్కు. చూడండి, మనకి ఇచ్చిన డేటాలో రేంజ్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ టు ఎల్ మైనస్ ఏ. ఇచ్చిన డేటాలో హైయెస్ట్ వాల్యూ ఎంత? 70. 10 to 70 వరకు కదా హైయెస్ట్ వాల్యూ, లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 70 అండ్ స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 10. 10 నుండి స్టార్ట్ అయింది, స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 10. రేంజ్ ఆర్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ ఎల్ మైనస్ ఏ, 70 minus 10 దట్ ఈస్ ఈక్వల్ 60. ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీతో మనకి ఇక్కడ సంబంధం. ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీ మీన్స్ రిపీటెడ్ వాల్యూస్, రిపీటెడ్ ఎన్ని టైమ్స్ రిపీట్ అయిందో దట్ ఈస్ ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీ. నెక్స్ట్, ఓన్లీ వాల్యూస్ మాత్రమే తీసుకోవాలి. కోఎఫిషియంట్ ఆఫ్ రేంజ్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ టు ఎల్ మైనస్ ఎస్ బై ఎల్ ప్లస్ ఎస్. 70 minus 10 by 70 plus 10 that is called 60 by 80. 3 by 4 or 0.75. 3 by 4 or 0.75 coefficient of range. Simple, very simple. Next, continuous series lo ela untundi. Find the range and coefficient of range. Size, frequency 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, 25 to 30. F is equal 4, 9, 15, 30, 40. ఇది రిపీటెడ్ వాల్యూ. 5 to 10 మధ్య సైజ్లు 4 ఉన్నారు. స్టూడెంట్స్ ఆర్ పర్సన్స్ ఎనీ, వాటితో మనకు ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీతో సంబంధం లేదు. రిపీటెడ్ వాల్యూస్ ఓన్లీ సైజ్ వేరియబుల్. 5, 10 లోయెస్ట్ వాల్యూ, స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 5 మనకి ఇచ్చిన డాటాలో సైజ్లో. లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 30. ఐడెంటిఫై చేసి ఈజీగా ఐడెంటిఫై చేయొచ్చు. ఇప్పుడు రేంజ్ ఆర్ ఇస్ ఈక్వల్ టు ఎల్ మైనస్ ఎస్. లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 30, స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ 5. ఓన్లీ వాల్యూస్, ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీ తీసుకోండి. రేంజ్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ 30 minus 5 దట్ ఈస్ ఈక్వల్ 25. రేంజ్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ 25. కోఎఫిషియంట్ ఆఫ్ రేంజ్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ టు ఎల్ మైనస్ ఎస్ బై ఎల్ ప్లస్ ఎస్. 30 minus 5 by 30 plus 5 that is called 25 by 35 that is called 5 by 7 or 0.714 coefficient of range. 3 series లో ఎలా ఉంటుంది రేంజ్? ఈజీ. మనకి ఇచ్చిన ఐటమ్ వాల్యూ మాత్రం తీసుకోవాలి. ఇండివిజువల్ సిరీస్తో ఓన్లీ ఐటమే ఉంటుంది. ఐటంలో లార్జెస్ట్ వాల్యూ, స్మాలెస్ట్ వాల్యూ ఐడెంటిఫై చేయాలి. డిస్క్రీట్ సిరీస్లో ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీ ఉంటుంది. ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీతో మనకు సంబంధం లేదు, ఓన్లీ వాల్యూ వేరియబుల్. అండ్ కంటిన్యూస్ సిరీస్లో కూడా మనకు ఫ్రీక్వెన్సీతో సంబంధం లేదు, ఓన్లీ మనకి ఇచ్చిన మార్క్స్ కానీ సైజ్ కానీ ఇవన్నీ కానీ క్లాస్. సింపుల్గా రేంజ్ సింపుల్, వెరీ ఈజీ టు అండర్స్టాండ్, సింపుల్ క్యాలిక్యులేట్, ఈజీ టు క్యాలిక్యులేట్. చాలా సింపుల్గా ఉంటుంది రేంజ్. Interquartile range and quartile deviation. Interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile Q3 and the lower quartile Q1. Interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile అంటే Q3 and lower quartile Q1 difference Q3 minus Q1. It covers dispersion of middle 50% of the item of the series. 50% of the item of the series. And symbolically interquartile range is equal Q3 minus Q1. Next, quartile deviation is up of the interquartile range. It is also called semi-interquartile range. Symbolically, quartile deviation is equal Q3 minus Q1 by 2. Q3 minus Q1 by 2. Quartile deviation. And coefficient of quartile deviation, it is the relative measures of quartile deviation. Symbolically, coefficient of quartile deviation is equal Q3 minus Q1 by Q3 plus Q1. Coefficient of quartile deviation is equal Q3 minus Q1 by Q3 plus Q1. And quartile deviation is equal Q3 minus Q1 by 2. Quartile deviation Q3 minus Q1 by 2. Coefficient of quartile deviation Q3 minus Q1 by Q3 plus Q1. Next example. Find interquartile range, quartile deviation and coefficient of quartile deviation. 28, 18, 20, 24, 27, 30, 15. Solution. మనకిచ్చిన డాటాను మనము అరేంజ్ ది డాటా ఇన్ అసెండింగ్ ఆర్డర్. క్వార్టైల్స్ క్యాలిక్యులేషన్ చేయాలంటే మనకిచ్చిన డాటాను అసెండింగ్ ఆర్డర్లో రాసుకోవాలి. అసెండింగ్లో రాస్తే మనకిచ్చిన డేటా 15, 18, 20, 24, 27, 28, 30. Total n is equal number of items 7. First of all, interquartile range is equal Q3 minus Q1. Q3 minus Q1. Q3 calculate the Q3. Q3 ni lower quartile range ni formula size of n plus 1 by 4th item. That is equal size of n is equal 7. 7 plus 1 by 4th item. That is equal second item. Size of second item. మనము అరేంజ్ చేసుకున్న డాటాలో సెకండ్ ఐటమ్ 18. Therefore, Q1 is equal 18. Lower quartile is equal 18. Next, upper quartile Q3 is equal size of 3 into n plus 1 by 4th item. Size of 3 into n is equal 7 plus 1 by 4th item. That is equal 6th item. మనం అరేంజ్ చేసుకున్న డాటాలో 6th item 28. Q3 is equal 28. Upper quartile Q3 is equal 28. Therefore, interquartile range is equal Q3 minus Q1. Q3 is equal to 28. Q1 is equal to 18. 28 minus 18 is equal to 10. Interquartile range is equal to 10. Next, quartile deviation. Quartile deviation is equal to Q3 minus Q1 by 2. Q3 is equal to 28 minus Q1 is equal to 18 by 2. Quartile deviation is equal to 10 by 2, that is equal to 5. And the next coefficient of quartile deviation is equal to Q3 minus Q1 by Q3 plus Q1. That is equal to 28 minus 18 by 28 plus 18. That is equal to 10 by 46. Coefficient of quartile deviation is equal to 0.214. Measures of dispersion lo absolute measures range, interquartile and quartile deviation, and mean deviation, standard deviation, Lorentz. First of all, manam range gurinchi and interquartile, quartile deviation, coefficient of quartile deviation గురించి డిస్కస్ చేయడము జరిగింది. Range is simple. Range is equal to L minus S. L is equal to largest value. S is equal to smallest value. Range is called L minus. Coefficient of range is called L minus S by L plus S. Simple. And interquartile range is equal to Q3 minus Q1. And quartile deviation is equal to Q3 minus Q1 by 2. And the coefficient of quartile deviation is equal to 0.217. Coefficient of quartile deviation is equal to Q3 minus Q1 by Q3 plus Q1. These are the interquartile and quartile deviation. Discuss about the individual series. And discrete at continuous series lo kuda manamu interquartile range Q3 ni ante lower quartile upper quartile find out chesti ఏ సిరీస్ లో అయినా మనము interquartile range గాని quartile deviation గాని coefficient of quartile deviation గాని మనం క్యాలిక్యులేషన్ చేయవచ్చు. దిస్ ఈజ్ ది range and quartile interquartile range and quartile deviation, coefficient of quartile deviation. Thank you.